The Montana wind cut through Clara's threadbare dress as she stumbled into the settlement of Redemption Creek, her feet bleeding through worn boots. 3 days without food had left her hollow-eyed and trembling. Behind her, somewhere in the vast expanse of prairie, her father's men were searching. She'd rather die of starvation than return to the man they'd sold her to, a cattle baron twice her age, with hands that left bruises. The general store's warmth beckoned. Clara's fingers found the silver locket at her throat, the last gift from her mother before fever took her. Inside was a miniature portrait and a lock of hair. It was all she had left of love in this world. Before we continue with Clara's journey, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. Your support truly matters and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. I'm curious, where are you listening from today? The shopkeeper's eyes were cold as winter stone when Clara approached the counter. "I need food," she whispered, voice cracking. "I can pay." She held out the locket with shaking hands. "That trinket ain't worth a loaf of bread," he sneered. "It's sterling silver." "Girl, I said no!" The door burst open, and Clara's heart seized. But it wasn't her father's men. A man filled the doorway, broad-shouldered and tall, with dark hair that brushed his collar, and eyes the color of storm clouds. Dust covered his leather vest and dark trousers. A Colt revolver sat low on his hip, but his hands remained relaxed at his sides. "Problem here, Garrett?" His voice was deep, measured. The shopkeeper straightened. "No problem, Mr. Donovan. Just telling this girl we don't take—" "I wasn't asking you." Those storm-gray eyes fixed on Clara, and she felt seen in a way that made her want to simultaneously hide and stand taller. "What do you need, miss?" Clara's throat tightened. "Food, shelter for a night. I can work for it. I can cook, clean, mend. Keep your locket." He turned to the shopkeeper. "Put together supplies: flour, salt pork, coffee, beans. Charge it to my account." "Mr. Donovan, I don't need charity," Clara began. He looked at her then, really looked, and something shifted in his expression. Not pity. Something else. Recognition, perhaps of a soul that had known hardship. "Not charity. My housekeeper passed 2 months back. The ranch house is falling to ruin, and I can't cook worth a damn. You need work, I need help. Fair trade." Clara wanted to argue, to maintain some shred of pride, but her stomach cramped with hunger. "For how long?" "Long as you need." He extended a calloused hand. Ethan rode beside her on a magnificent black stallion while she sat on a gentler mare he'd borrowed from the livery. The landscape rolled endlessly. Golden grassland punctuated by dark pines, mountains rising purple in the distance. The sky stretched so vast and blue it made her chest ache. "You running from something?" Ethan asked quietly. Clara stiffened. "Why would you think that?" "You got the look. I've seen it before." He paused. "I'm not going to ask questions you don't want to answer. But if trouble comes looking for you, I need to know what I'm facing." She studied his profile. The strong jaw, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way he sat in the saddle like he was born there. Something about him invited truth. "My father arranged a marriage to a man who hurt me during our courting period. I ran." Ethan's jaw clenched, and his hand moved unconsciously toward his revolver. "He follow you?" "He'll send men. He doesn't like losing property he's paid for." "You're not property." The words came out sharp, absolute. "You're a person with the right to choose her own path." Tears burned Clara's eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. The ranch appeared if they crested a hill, a sprawling house of weathered wood, a large barn, corrals with horses and cattle dotting the valley beyond. It was beautiful in its rugged practicality. Inside, the house told the story of a man living alone. Dust-covered surfaces, dishes piled in the basin, and the air smelled stale. But the bones were good. Solid furniture, a massive stone fireplace, and windows that let in generous light. "Your room is upstairs, second door on the right," Ethan said, setting down the supplies. "I'll bunk in the foreman's cabin for propriety's sake. Bathroom's at the end of the hall. There's a copper tub, and I'll heat water for you." The kindness threatened to undo her. "Why are you doing this?" He met her gaze, and something flickered in those gray eyes. Pain, maybe. Loss. "Because someone should have done it for my sister. She ran from a bad situation too. Didn't make it." His voice roughened. "Maybe if someone had helped her." "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just let me help you." He turned toward the stove. "Now, let's see if we can't get some food in you before you fall over." The first weeks developed a rhythm. Clara woke before dawn to start coffee, the scent filling the house and bringing Ethan in from the barn. She cooked meals that made him close his eyes in appreciation. Sourdough biscuits, venison stew, apple pie from the fruit cellar. She scrubbed floors, mended his shirts, and brought order to the chaos. In return, Ethan taught her to ride properly, to shoot a rifle, to read the weather in the clouds. His hands were patient as he adjusted her grip on the reins, his voice steady as he called instructions. "Easy now. Let the horse feel your confidence. That's it." She discovered he was well-read, his shelves lined with books, Shakespeare and Whitman, alongside practical manuals. They'd sit by the fireplace in the evenings, reading in comfortable silence. The only sounds the crackling fire and turning pages. But there was a tension growing between them, unspoken but palpable. The way his gaze would linger when she brushed past him. The way her breath caught when he'd reach around her to grab something from a high shelf, his chest momentarily against her back. The accidental touches that felt increasingly deliberate. One evening, Clara brought coffee to where Ethan sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said softly. "Yes," but he was looking at her. Her heart hammered. "Ethan, I made myself a promise after Sarah died." His voice was rough. "Said I wouldn't let myself care for anyone again. Caring means losing, and I couldn't survive that twice." Clara set down the coffee and sat beside him, their shoulders not quite touching. "Then I should leave. I don't want to cause you pain." "Too late for that." He turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. "You walked into that store 6 weeks ago, and something in me recognized something in you. Like we're two halves of the same broken thing." "You'll break my heart," she whispered. Tears spilling over. Years of disappointment, of men who'd seen her as property or burden, made her believe happiness wasn't meant for her. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face with his calloused hand. His thumb brushed away her tears with infinite gentleness. "Then I'll spend forever fixing it." The kiss was soft, tentative, asking permission with every second. Clara's hands found his chest, feeling his heart pound as wildly as hers. He tasted like coffee and promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Me too." He pressed his forehead to hers. but I think maybe being scared together is better than being alone. The peace shattered 3 days later when 4 riders approached the ranch. Clara was hanging laundry when she saw them, and her blood turned to ice. She recognized the lead man, Frank Morris, her intended, with his cold eyes and cruel mouth. She ran for the house, but they cut her off, Morris dismounting with predatory grace. "There you are, my wayward bride. Your father's been real worried." "I'm not going back." "That wasn't a request, girl." He grabbed her arm hard enough to leave marks. "Let her go." Ethan's voice cut through the air like a blade. He stood 20 feet away, hand hovering near his Colt. His eyes had gone flat and dangerous. Morris laughed. "This doesn't concern you, cowboy. The girl's mine. Her father accepted my payment." "Clara, come here." Ethan's command was quiet but absolute. She tried to pull away, but Morris's grip tightened painfully. "She stays with me. Last chance." Ethan's stance shifted, and Clara recognized the gunfighter's posture. "Let her go, or I make you." Morris shoved Clara aside and went for his gun, but Ethan was faster, inhumanly fast. His shot rang out, and Morris's weapon flew from his hand before he'd cleared leather. The other 3 riders froze. "Any of you want to try?" Ethan asked calmly, his Colt still trained on them. "Or do you want to ride back and tell Clara's father she's under my protection now?" "You know who you're crossing," one of them sputtered. "I know exactly who I'm crossing, and I'm telling you Clara stays here of her own free will, or you leave here in a pine box. Your choice." Morris clutched his bleeding hand, rage and fear warring on his face. But he knew death when he saw it standing before him. "This ain't over." "Yes," Ethan said softly. "It is. Clara, tell them." She stood, drawing herself to full height despite her trembling. "I will never marry you, Frank Morris. I choose to stay here with Ethan. If you or my father come for me again, I'll shoot you myself." The men rode off, Morris shooting venomous looks over his shoulder. When they were gone, Clara's legs gave out. Ethan caught her, pulling her against his chest. "You're safe. I've got you." "He'll come back with more men." "Let him try." Ethan's arms tightened around her. "I'll die before I let anyone take you." She pulled back to look at him, really look at him. This man who'd given her shelter, taught her strength, shown her what respect looked like. This man who'd just faced down 4 armed men without hesitation. "Why?" "Because I love you." The words were simple, devastating. "I think I've loved you since you tried to trade that locket for bread. You are so proud, so determined to survive with dignity and tact. You reminded me that strength isn't just about gunfights and hard work. It's about getting up every morning and choosing to keep going." "I love you too," she whispered. "I'm terrified of it, but I do." He kissed her then, deeper this time, with passion tempered by reverence. His hands spanned her waist, and she felt cherished, claimed in the best way. When they finally broke apart, both knew everything had changed. "Marry me," Ethan said. "Not because you need protection or shelter, but because I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. Because your laugh makes this house feel like a home. Because together we're stronger than we ever were apart. Yes. No hesitation, no fear. Just certainty. Yes, I'll marry you." They married the following Sunday at the small church in Redemption Creek, with the circuit preacher presiding. Clara wore a simple cream dress that Ethan had commissioned from the dressmaker, and wildflowers in her hair that he'd picked himself that morning. He wore his best black suit his hair slicked back, and couldn't stop smiling. I, Ethan Donovan, take you, Clara Hayes, to be my lawfully wedded wife, he said, voice strong and clear. I promise to protect you, respect you, and love you through every storm. You are my partner, my equal, and my heart. Clara's voice shook, but never wavered. I, Clara Hayes, take you, Ethan Donovan, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to stand beside you, to build a life with you, and to love you with everything I am. You saw me when I was invisible, and you gave me the strength to see myself. When the preacher said, "You may kiss your bride," Ethan pulled her close and kissed her softly, sweetly, with promise of all the kisses to come. The reception was held at the ranch, with neighbors Clara had come to know, bringing food and well wishes. As the sun set and lanterns were lit, Ethan pulled Clara into a dance on the porch, humming a tune since they had no musicians. "Happy?" he murmured against her hair. "So happy it scares me." Good scared or bad scared? She leaned back to look at him, this man who'd become her everything. Good scared. The kind that means something matters enough to lose. "You're not going to lose me, Clara Donovan." He loved saying her new name, she could tell. "We're in this together, forever." "Together," she repeated, and kissed him under the Montana stars. Frank Morris never returned, but Clara's father sent one final messenger, a letter disowning her. She read it once, then fed it to the fireplace, watching it burn. Ethan stood behind her, arms wrapped around her waist. "Any regrets?" he asked. "Not a single one." She turned in his arms. "He gave me nothing but pain. You gave me everything that matters." The seasons turned. Winter came fierce and unforgiving, and they'd sit by the fire, Clara reading aloud, while Ethan whittled or mended tack. Spring brought new calves and the back-breaking work of branding, Clara working alongside the ranch hands, earning their respect. Summer meant long rides across their land, picnics by the creek, and stolen kisses in the barn. One autumn evening, as they sat on the porch watching their horses graze in the twilight, Clara placed Ethan's hand on her still flat stomach. His eyes widened, then filled with tears. "Really? Really? You're going to be a father." He pulled her onto his lap, cradling her carefully, his face buried in her neck. "I never thought. After Sarah, I never thought I'd have family again. You have me. You have this baby. You have a whole life full of love." She cupped his face, making him look at her. "You fixed my broken heart, Ethan Donovan, and I fixed yours." "No," he said softly, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "We fixed each other." When their daughter was born the following spring, they named her Sarah Hope. Sarah for the sister Ethan had lost, Hope for the future they'd built together. Clara held the tiny bundle, marveling at her perfect fingers, her dark hair, her father's gray eyes. Ethan sat beside them on the bed, his arm around Clara's shoulders, his other hand gently stroking his daughter's head. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For walking into that store, for being brave enough to stay, for loving me even when we were both terrified." He kissed Clara's temple. "For making me believe in second chances." "We saved each other," Clara said simply. "That's what love does." Outside, the Montana wind sang through the pines, and the ranch stretched out under endless sky. Inside, a family held each other close, their broken pieces forged into something stronger, something beautiful, something that would last forever. Two hearts that had known loss found healing. Two souls that had been alone found home. And in the wild, unforgiving West, love proved to be the strongest force of all. Sarah Hope was 6 months old when the first real test of their peace arrived. Clara was in the kitchen preparing supper, the baby sleeping in a cradle Ethan had carved from pine, when she heard riders approaching fast. Her hands stilled on the knife she'd been using to cut vegetables, and cold fear trickled down her spine. But when she looked out the window, relief flooded through her. It was Tom Brennan, their nearest neighbor, and he was alone. Still, the way he rode, hard and urgent, meant trouble. Ethan met him in the yard, and Clara saw them talking, saw Ethan's posture go rigid. She walked out with the rifle they now kept by the door, her other hand instinctively moving to the revolver at her hip. Ethan had insisted she stay armed after Morris's visit, and she'd become a decent shot. "What's happened?" Clara asked. Tom's weathered face was grim. "Raiders hit the Murphy ranch last night, killed John, burned half the house, took off with 20 head of cattle and his 2 horses. Clara's stomach dropped. The Murphys lived only 8 miles south. Mary and the children? Alive, thank God. Mary's tough as they come. Fought them off with John's shotgun. But she's alone now, with 4 young ones." Tom looked between them. "We're forming a posse. Sheriff's asking all able men to ride at first light." Ethan's jaw clenched. "I'll be there." "No." The word burst from Clara before she could stop it. Both men looked at her, and she forced herself to continue, despite the tremor in her voice. "You have a family now, Ethan. You have Sarah. You have me." He crossed to her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Which is exactly why I have to go. These raiders won't stop with the Murphys. Every ranch in the valley is at risk, including ours." "Then I'm coming with you." "Clara, I can shoot as well as half the men who'll ride with you, and you know it." She met his gaze steadily. "We're partners, remember? Or does that only count when it's convenient?" Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, pride, concern all mixed together. "It's dangerous. Living is dangerous. Loving is dangerous. I didn't survive Frank Morris and my father just to hide in the house while you risk your life." She softened her tone. "Together, Ethan. We do this together." Tom cleared his throat. I hate to interrupt, but what about the baby?" "Margaret Holloway owes me a favor," Clara said, referencing the widow 2 miles north whose difficult childbirth she'd helped with months ago. "She'll watch Sarah." Ethan studied her face for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "All right, but you stay close to me, and if I tell you to run, you run. Deal?" "Deal." They rode out at dawn with 15 men and 2 other women. Mary Murphy herself, fury in her eyes and her husband's rifle across her saddle, and Beth Carlson, a former Army scout who could track better than any man in the valley. The sheriff, a grizzled veteran named William Hayes, led them south toward the broken country where outlaws often hid. Clara rode beside Ethan, hyper-aware of the weight of her weapons, the tension in the air, the grim determination on every face. She'd left Sarah with Margaret after nursing her one last time, kissing that soft head and breathing in her baby smell, trying not to think about what could happen. "You're quiet," Ethan said softly as they rode. "Scared," she admitted, "but also angry. These men think they can just take what they want, hurt who they want. Someone has to stand against them. That someone doesn't have to be you." She looked at him. "Yes, it does. Because if we all hide, if we all say, 'Let someone else fight,' then evil wins. My father taught me to be silent and obedient. You taught me to be strong." I'm choosing strength. Pride shone in his eyes, mixed with worry, mixed with love. Just stay alive, Mrs. Donovan. I've got plans for our future that require you in it. They found the raiders' camp just before noon, tucked into a canyon with high walls and a single narrow entrance. 8 men lounged around a fire, the stolen cattle penned nearby. They looked rough, dangerous, the kind who'd killed before and would again without hesitation. Sheriff Hayes gathered the posse behind a ridge. We go in quiet, get the drop on them. No shooting unless necessary. I want them alive for trial, if possible. His eyes found Clara and the other women. You 3 stay back with the horses. No. Mary Murphy's voice was hard as iron. They killed my John. I'm going in. Ma'am, I understand your anger, but nothing. Either I ride with you, or I go in alone. Your choice, Sheriff. Hayes looked like he wanted to argue, but recognized the futility. Fine, but Clara, you stay with the horses. You've got a baby to get back to. Clara wanted to protest, but Ethan's hand found hers, squeezing gently. He's right. Please, Clara. For Sarah. She hated it, but she nodded. Be careful, all of you. They moved out, leaving Clara with 3 other men, too old for fighting, and all the horses. She watched them descend toward the canyon, her heart in her throat, her hand on her rifle. Everything happened fast after that. The posse got into position. The sheriff called out for surrender, and the raiders opened fire. Gunshots echoed off canyon walls, making it impossible to tell who was shooting where. Clara watched helplessly from the ridge, seeing flashes of gunfire, hearing shouts and screams. Then she saw movement to her left. 3 more riders coming fast from the opposite direction. Clearly, reinforcements for the raiders. They hadn't seen Clara and the older men yet, focused on joining the fight below. They'll hit our people from behind, one of the old-timers breathed. Clara didn't hesitate. She spurred her horse forward, cutting down the slope at an angle to intercept. Behind her, she heard the men shouting, but she didn't stop. Ethan was down there. Mary was down there. Good people who'd shown her kindness and community. She pulled her rifle and fired a warning shot high. The 3 riders wheeled toward her, surprised. One laughed when he saw she was a woman. Well, ain't you a pretty little thing, he called. Why don't you put down that rifle before you hurt yourself? Turn around and ride away, Clara said, her voice steady, despite her racing heart. Last chance. They exchanged looks and laughed again. The leader spurred his horse forward, reaching for her. Clara shot him through the shoulder, the recoil familiar now after months of practice. He screamed and fell from his saddle. The other 2 went for their guns. Clara fired again, hitting one in the leg. But the 3rd got his weapon up, and she knew with horrible certainty she wouldn't reload in time. The shot rang out, but it wasn't aimed at her. The 3rd raider jerked and fell. Behind him, Ethan sat on his black stallion, rifle smoking, his face a mask of fury and fear. Clara. He was off his horse before it stopped moving, pulling her from her saddle into his arms. What the hell were you thinking? They were going to flank you. I couldn't let... You could have been killed. His hands ran over her, checking for injuries, his breath coming hard. God, Clara, you promised to stay back. I promised to stay with the horses. I did. Then I saw a threat and eliminated it. She pulled back to look at him. Isn't that what you would have done? He stared at her, emotions warring on his face. Then he kissed her hard, desperate, claiming, "Don't ever scare me like that again." Can't promise that, but I can promise I'll always come back to you. The fight in the canyon had ended. 5 raiders dead, 3 captured, the stolen cattle recovered. 2 men from the posse were injured, but would survive. Mary Murphy stood over the body of the man who'd killed her husband, tears streaming down her face, but her spine straight. On the ride back, Sheriff Hayes pulled his horse alongside Clara's. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. Probably both, she admitted. You saved lives today. If those 3 had hit us from behind, he shook his head. You've got the heart of a warrior, Mrs. Donovan. Your husband's a lucky man. I'm the lucky one, she said softly, looking at Ethan riding ahead. He taught me I was worth saving. So now I save others. That night, back at the ranch, with Sarah sleeping peacefully between them, Ethan and Clara lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I can't lose you, he said finally. When I saw you riding toward those men, my heart stopped. I know, I felt the same when you rode into that canyon. She rolled to face him. But we can't live in fear, Ethan. We have to trust each other. Trust that we're both strong enough to face whatever comes. You're asking me to be all right with you risking your life. No, I'm asking you to believe in me the way I believe in you. She touched his face. You said I wasn't property. You said I had the right to choose my path. This is me choosing, not to be reckless, but to stand up when standing up matters. He pulled her close, careful of the baby between them. You're the strongest person I've ever known. It terrifies me and amazes me in equal measure. Good. That means we're even. He laughed softly, and she felt some of the tension drain from him. Together, always together. 2 years passed in a blur of seasons and growth. Sarah Hope learned to walk, then run, her laughter filling the house and ranch yard. Clara taught her to gather eggs and feed the chickens, while Ethan held her on his saddle, teaching her to love horses the way he did. The ranch prospered. With Clara's organizational skills and Ethan's hard work, the Double D became known throughout the territory for quality cattle and well-trained horses. They hired 2 steady ranch hands, Miguel, a quiet Mexican vaquero with magic hands for breaking horses, and Tommy, a young man escaping his own troubled past who reminded Ethan of himself. Clara had become a respected figure in Redemption Creek. When anyone had trouble, sickness, injury, difficult birth, they sent for Mrs. Donovan. She had a gift for healing and a calm presence in crisis. The community that had once been just Ethan's became theirs, together. But peace in the West was always temporary. It was late September when the letter arrived, delivered by a U.S. Marshal with tired eyes and a grim expression. Ethan read it on the porch while Clara nursed Sarah, now a bright-eyed toddler who insisted on helping with everything. His face went pale, then hard. Son of a bitch. Ethan? Clara gestured at Sarah, who was thankfully too absorbed in her doll to notice. Language. What is it? He handed her the letter. Clara's blood ran cold as she read. Frank Morris had been arrested for murder in Colorado. During questioning, he'd claimed that Ethan Donovan had stolen his property, meaning Clara, and that she'd been party to rustling cattle from Morris's ranch. It was all lies, but Morris had friends in high places, and they'd convinced a judge to issue a warrant. They want you to stand trial, Clara whispered. In Colorado, in Morris's territory with his allies everywhere. It's a setup. They know I'd never get a fair trial there. Ethan's jaw clenched. Morris couldn't beat me with guns, so he's trying to beat me with law. The marshal, who'd been standing respectfully aside, cleared his throat. Mr. Donovan, I'm required to bring you in, but I'll tell you straight. I don't like this. The whole thing stinks. If you're willing to come voluntarily, I'll testify that you cooperated fully. Might help with the judge. When do we leave? Ethan asked. Dawn tomorrow. And Mrs. Donovan? He turned to Clara. You're listed as a witness. You'll need to come too. Clara's arms tightened around Sarah. Leave her daughter? Travel to Colorado to face the man who'd terrorized her? Every instinct screamed no. But she looked at Ethan, saw the worry in his eyes, not for himself, but for her. And she knew what she had to do. We'll be ready, she said firmly. That night, they arranged for Margaret Holloway to watch Sarah again. The older woman had become like a grandmother to the child, and agreed immediately, despite the longer timeline. You go fight this nonsense, Margaret said, holding Sarah, who was already reaching for her. This little one will be safe with me, and you know it. Saying goodbye to Sarah was the hardest thing Clara had ever done. The toddler didn't understand why Mama and Papa were leaving, and her tears broke Clara's heart into pieces. We'll come back, Clara promised, kissing her daughter's soft hair over and over. Mama promises, we'll come back. Ethan held them both, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Be good for Aunt Margaret, little one. We love you so much. The journey to Colorado took 10 days of hard riding. The marshal, whose name was John Carson, proved to be a decent man who gave them as much privacy and consideration as possible. He even allowed them to share a tent at night, though he apologized for having to keep Ethan in handcuffs during the day. Regulations, he said with genuine regret. But at night, in camp, I don't see why we can't be reasonable. As they rode through changing landscape, grasslands giving way to rocky hills and pine forests, Clara and Ethan talked about everything and nothing. Plans for the ranch, hopes for Sarah's future, memories of how they met. Do you ever regret it? Ethan asked one night as they lay under the stars. Everything you've been through because of me? Never. Not once. She laced her fingers through his. You gave me life, Ethan. Before you, I was just surviving. You taught me what living really means. If this goes badly, it won't. Clara, listen to me. He rolled to face her, his expression serious in the firelight. If they convict me, if they send me to prison or worse, I need you to promise me something. No, please, promise me you'll go back to Sarah. Raise her strong like you. Teach her to ride and shoot and stand up for what's right. Tell her about me, about us, but don't let grief consume you. Live, Clara. Live fully and completely. Tears streamed down her face. You're asking too much. I'm asking you to be the woman I fell in love with, the one who rode toward danger to save others, the one who chose strength over fear every single time. He wiped her tears with him, not just in court, but to come back to us, to our life. Promise you won't give up. I promise, he kissed her softly. I've got too much to live for to give up now. They arrived in Silverton, Colorado on a gray morning that matched Clara's mood. The town was larger than Redemption Creek, more prosperous from silver mining, and the jail was stone and iron, built to hold the worst kinds of criminals. Frank Morris was already there, brought from Denver, where he'd been held. Clara saw him through a window as they processed Ethan, and bile rose in her throat. He looked thinner, harder, his eyes full of malice when they landed on her. The trial was set for 3 days hence, giving them time to prepare. Marshal Carson arranged for a lawyer, a young man named David Pierce, who seemed earnest but inexperienced. I'll be honest with you, Mr. Donovan, Pierce said as they met in a private room at the boarding house where Clara was staying. Morris has witnesses who'll testify they saw you on his property taking cattle. He has documents showing your brand on his land. And he has influential friends. All lies, Ethan said flatly. I've never been on Morris's ranch. Every head of cattle on the Double D was born there or purchased legally with bills of sale I can produce. Can you prove you weren't there on the dates in question? Ethan's jaw tightened. I can't prove a negative. How does anyone prove they weren't somewhere? That's the problem. Pierce looked genuinely troubled. The burden of proof should be on the prosecution. But with a hostile jury and judge who's friends with Morris's family, this is going to be difficult. Clara leaned forward. What if I testified? I can confirm Ethan was home on those dates. I can tell the jury about Morris, about how he abused me, how this is retaliation. They'll say you're a biased witness. His wife, of course you'd lie for him. Pierce ran a hand through his hair. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be discouraging. I just want you to understand what we're facing. That night, Clara paced the small room, while Ethan sat on the bed watching her. They'd allowed him to stay with her under guard rather than in a cell, a small mercy from Marshal Carson. There has to be something we can do, Clara said. Some way to prove the truth. The truth doesn't always win, Clara. Not against money and power. She stopped pacing and looked at him. The man I married doesn't give up that easily. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. The man you married is terrified of letting you down. Impossible. You could never let me down. She crossed to him, taking his hands. We've faced worse than this and survived. We'll face this too. Together? Always together. The answer came from an unexpected source. The next morning, a woman appeared at the boarding house, asking for Clara. She was in her 50s, well-dressed, with intelligent eyes and a determined set to her jaw. Mrs. Donovan, my name is Caroline Winters. I believe we need to talk about Frank Morris. They met in Clara's room with Marshal Carson present. Mrs. Winters produced a leather portfolio filled with papers. My daughter was engaged to Frank Morris 3 years ago, she said quietly. She broke it off after he beat her severely during an argument. He threatened to ruin our family if she spoke against him, and we were too frightened to fight. When I heard about this trial, about another woman he'd hurt, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. Clara's breath caught. You'll testify. I'll do better than that. I'll bring my daughter and 3 other women who Morris courted and abused. We'll tell the truth about what kind of man he really is. Her eyes were fierce. And I have documents showing Morris falsified those cattle records. My husband was his bookkeeper before he died. He kept copies of everything, including the real records showing those cattle were never stolen. Hope blazed in Clara's chest. Why didn't you come forward before? Fear, shame, the belief that no one would listen to women over a powerful man. Mrs. Winters reached across and took Clara's hand. But you fought him. You escaped and built a new life. If you can be brave, so can I. The trial began on a cold October morning. The courtroom was packed, curiosity seekers and Morris's allies filling most seats. But Clara noticed something else. Women scattered throughout the crowd, watching with intense focus. Mrs. Winters' recruits, perhaps, and others who'd heard the story and come to witness. The prosecutor was slick and confident, painting Ethan as a dangerous outlaw who'd stolen another man's property, both his cattle and his intended bride. He produced Morris's falsified records, his paid witnesses who swore they'd seen Ethan on Morris's land. But when David Pierce began the defense, something shifted. He called Mrs. Winters to the stand, and she told her story with quiet dignity. Then her daughter, visibly shaking but resolute. Then the other women, each one adding their testimony to the pile of Morris's crimes. The courtroom went silent as they spoke. Even the judge, who'd seemed bored and biased at first, began to pay attention. When Clara took the stand, she told the whole truth. The arranged marriage, Morris's violence, her escape, meeting Ethan and finding not ownership but partnership. "Mr. Morris didn't love me," she said, clearly. "He wanted to own me. There's a difference. Ethan Donovan showed me what real respect looks like, what real love looks like. And for that, Morris wants to destroy him." Morris's lawyer tried to discredit her, to paint her as a runaway wife who'd seduced an innocent rancher. But Clara had learned strength from Ethan and the hard lessons of the West. She met every accusation with calm truth. "I am not property," she said, echoing Ethan's words from so long ago. "I'm a person with the right to choose my path. I chose Ethan. I choose him still. And no amount of lies will change that truth." When the jury returned, after only 2 hours of deliberation, Clara held her breath. Ethan stood straight and tall, his hand finding hers, even with the guard between them. On the charge of cattle rustling, we find the defendant not guilty. Relief crashed through Clara so powerfully she nearly collapsed. Ethan caught her, pulling her close as the courtroom erupted in noise. But the judge wasn't finished. He fixed Morris with a hard stare. "Mr. Morris, based on the testimony presented here, I'm ordering your immediate arrest for fraud, perjury, and assault. Bailiff, take him into custody." Morris's face went purple with rage. "You can't do this! I have rights!" "So do the women you hurt." The judge's voice was cold. "And so does justice. Take him away." As Morris was dragged from the courtroom, still screaming threats and curses, Ethan and Clara held each other and wept. "It's over," she whispered. "It's finally over." "No," Ethan said, pulling back to look at her, his eyes shining with tears and love and relief. "It's not over. It's just beginning. Our real life, without shadows hanging over it. That begins now." They rode back to Montana with Marshal Carson, who'd become a friend during the ordeal. The journey felt lighter, the landscape more beautiful, the future suddenly vast with possibility. When they finally rode up to the ranch, and Sarah came running from Margaret's arms, shouting, "Mama! Papa!" At the top of her lungs, Clara knew she was finally, truly home. Ethan scooped his daughter up, spinning her around as she giggled. Then he reached for Clara, pulling them both close. "My girls," he said softly, "my whole world." "Our world," Clara corrected. "We built it together." And as the Montana sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, the Donovan family stood together, tested by fire, proven by trial, and bound by a love that nothing could break. 3 more years passed in peace and prosperity. Sarah Hope grew into a bright, fearless child who could ride almost as well as her father and was already reading from her mother's books. The ranch expanded with the addition of a new barn and 2 more hired hands. Clara's reputation as a healer spread throughout the territory, and she began teaching other women her skills. Then, one spring morning, Clara woke feeling different. Not sick exactly, but aware of a new presence. She smiled, recognizing the signs, and decided to surprise Ethan. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching Sarah play with her pony, Clara took Ethan's hand and placed it on her belly. What? Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by pure joy. Really? Another baby? Another baby. Due late November, I think. He kissed her deeply, then dropped to his knees in front of her, pressing his face to her stomach. Hello in there, little one. Your sister is very excited to meet you, even though she doesn't know about you yet. Sarah looked up from her pony. What are you doing, Papa? Come here a little bit. Ethan pulled her onto his lap. How would you feel about being a big sister? Her eyes went wide. Truly? I'll have a baby? We'll have a baby, Clara corrected. Our family is growing. Sarah threw her arms around both parents. I'll teach them everything. How to ride and read and find the best places to hide in the barn. Ethan laughed, and Clara felt her heart swell with love for this life they'd built. From that desperate morning in the general store to this moment of perfect happiness, it seemed impossible. Yet here they were. The pregnancy was easier than her first, perhaps because Clara wasn't carrying the weight of fear and uncertainty. She had a husband who cherished her, a daughter who delighted her, a community that supported her, and a home that was truly hers. But the West had one more test in store. It was late October, Clara 8 months pregnant and moving slowly, when Tom Brennan appeared at their door at midnight, bloody and barely conscious. Ethan caught him before he fell, and Clara rushed to help despite her awkward bulk. Raiders, Tom gasped. Bigger group than before. Hit the Carlson Ranch. Beth fought, but they took her. Took her daughter too, heading north into the mountains. Ice flooded Clara's veins. Beth Carlson had ridden with them against the first raiders. She was a friend, and her daughter Emma was Sarah's playmate. How many? Ethan asked, already moving toward his weapons. Saw at least a dozen, maybe more. Tom gripped Ethan's arm. They're not like the others. More organized, more dangerous. One of them, I recognized him from wanted posters. Cyrus Black. He's got a bounty of $5,000. Ethan and Clara exchanged looks. Cyrus Black was a legend and a nightmare. Former Confederate guerrilla who turned to outlawry after the war, leaving a trail of death and destruction across the territories. I'll ride with the others, Ethan said. Clara, I need you to... No. Her voice was quiet but absolute. I'm coming. Clara, you're 8 months pregnant. Beth and Emma are out there. That little girl is terrified, and Beth is probably hurt. She moved to her weapons cabinet, pulling out her rifle and checking the load. I'm the best tracker we have besides Beth herself. You need me. It's too dangerous. She turned to face him, and he saw the steel in her eyes, the same steel that had faced down Morris's men, that had testified in a hostile courtroom, that had chosen strength over safety every single time. Ethan Donovan, you taught me that being strong means standing up when standing up matters. Those are our people out there. That's our friend and her child. I'm not asking your permission. I'm telling you I'm going. For a long moment they stared at each other. Then Ethan nodded slowly. All right, but we do this smart. You stay back from direct confrontation. You track and guide. But when the fighting starts, you take cover. Deal? Deal. They left Sarah with Margaret again. The older woman shaking her head, but understanding the necessity. Bring them home, she said, hugging Clara carefully. All of them, including yourself and that baby. The posse assembled quickly. Ethan, Clara, Sheriff Hayes, Miguel, Tommy, and 8 other men from the valley. Tom came too, despite his injuries, refusing to stay behind. They rode hard through the night, following the trail north into the mountains. Clara rode slightly apart, reading signs the others might miss. A broken branch here, disturbed pine needles there, a scrape on rock where a horse had passed. "They're moving fast, but not trying to hide their trail," she called to the group. "Either they're arrogant or they want us to follow." "Probably both," Sheriff Hayes said grimly. "Black likes to set traps. Everyone, stay alert." As dawn broke over the peaks, painting the snow-capped mountains in shades of pink and gold, they found the raiders' camp in a box canyon. Ethan raised his hand, and the posse stopped behind cover to assess. 12 men, as Tom had said, plus 2 on guard duty at the canyon mouth. Beth and Emma were tied near the fire, both alive, but Beth had blood on her face. Emma was crying silently, clearly terrified. "It's a trap," Clara whispered. "Look at the positions. They've got men hidden in the rocks on both sides. They knew we'd come." Ethan studied the layout, and Clara could see him calculating odds, angles, risks. "We need a distraction, something to draw them out of position." "I'll do it." The words were out before Clara could think better of them. "Absolutely not. Listen to me. They won't shoot a pregnant woman right away. They'll want to capture me, use me as leverage. That gives you time to move into position." She met his eyes. "It's the best play, and you know it." "I can't." His voice cracked. "Clara, I can't lose you." She took his face in her hands. "You won't, because you're the best shot in 3 territories, and you'll be covering me every second. Trust me, Ethan. Trust us." Finally, reluctantly, he nodded. "At the first sign of real danger, you run. Promise me." "I promise." They moved into position. Ethan with his rifle on the ridge, the others spreading through the rocks. Clara took a deep breath, rested her hand on her belly, where the baby kicked, as if sensing her fear, and walked her horse into the open. "Hello, the camp," she called out, keeping her hands visible and away from her weapons. The raiders spun toward her, guns drawn. Then their leader emerged from a tent, a tall man with cold eyes and a scar running down his face. Cyrus Black. "Well, well, what do we have here?" His smile was predatory. "A pregnant woman riding alone into our camp. Either brave or stupid." "Neither. Just someone who wants her friends back." Clara kept her voice steady. "Beth and Emma Carlson. Let them go and we'll all ride away peacefully." Black laughed. "You're in no position to negotiate, sweetheart. In fact, you just made yourself a hostage too." He gestured to his men. "Take her." 2 men moved toward Clara. She tensed, ready to run. But then Emma's voice rang out. "Mrs. Donovan!" The distraction was all Ethan needed. His first shot took down the guard on the left ridge. The second got the man on the right. Then the posse burst from cover, catching the raiders in a crossfire. Clara spurred her horse toward Beth and Emma, pulling her knife to cut their bonds. Bullets whined past her, and she heard Ethan's rifle bark again and again, covering her with deadly accuracy. "Come on!" She got Beth's ropes cut, then Emma's. The little girl clung to her mother, sobbing. "There are horses behind that tent," Beth shouted over the gunfire. "Go!" They ran, Clara's pregnant bulk, making her slower than she wanted. Behind them, the battle raged. She saw Miguel take down 2 men with his rifle, saw Sheriff Hayes in hand-to-hand combat with another raider. Then Cyrus Black stepped in front of them, gun raised. "Nobody moves." Clara's hand went to her revolver, but Black was faster. Drop it." She did, slowly, her mind racing. Black advanced, gun trained on her. You ruined a perfectly good ambush, he said, conversationally. But maybe I can salvage something. A pregnant woman makes excellent leverage. Beth moved. Later, Clara would remember it in flashes. Beth shoving Emma behind her. Beth grabbing the knife Clara had dropped. Beth lunging at Black with a wild cry. Black fired. Beth fell. "Mama!" Emma's scream pierced the air. Rage, pure and absolute, flooded through Clara. She dropped her revolver, but she still had the derringer in her boot. She pulled it in one smooth motion and fired at Black's chest. The small gun had limited range, but they were close enough. Black staggered back, surprise on his face. "You bit." Ethan's rifle shot took him in the head before he could finish. He dropped like a stone. The fight ended quickly after that. With their leader dead, the remaining raiders surrendered. Clara knelt beside Beth, pressing her hand to the wound in Beth's side. "Hold on," she said urgently. "Stay with me, Beth." "Emma," Beth gasped. "Promise me. You're going to tell her yourself. I've dealt with worse wounds than this." Clara ripped her own shirt to make bandages, her training taking over. "Tom, I need clean water and whiskey, now!" Ethan was there, pulling Emma gently away so Clara could work. His hands were shaking as he helped, following Clara's instructions to apply pressure, to keep Beth conscious and talking. "You're a damn fool," Beth said weakly to Clara, managing a ghost of her usual humor. 8 months pregnant and riding into a gunfight takes one to know one. Now shut up and conserve your strength. The ride back was long and tense. Beth held on, her toughness proving once again why she was legendary in the valley. Emma stayed with her mother, talking constantly, as if her voice alone could keep Beth anchored to life. When they finally reached Redemption Creek, Doc Morrison was waiting. He took over Beth's care while Clara sagged against Ethan, suddenly exhausted. "You scared 10 years off my life," Ethan said into her hair. "Sorry, but she wasn't. Not really. They'd saved Beth and Emma. They'd stopped Cyrus Black. She'd do it all again." A contraction hit without warning, and Clara gasped. Ethan went pale. "Was that the baby? I think." Another contraction, stronger this time. The baby's coming. The next hours blurred together. Doc Morrison turned from treating Beth to treating Clara, delivering a healthy baby boy in the room next to where Beth rested. Emma and Sarah played in the waiting area, somehow managing to sweep despite the drama. When it was over, Clara held her son, small and perfect and already demanding, and looked at Ethan through exhausted tears. "He's beautiful," Ethan said softly, running a finger over the baby's tiny hand. "What should we name him?" Clara thought of the day's events, of the courage she'd witnessed, of the fight for what mattered. "Thomas, after Tom Brennan, who rode wounded to save his neighbors. And James, after your father. Thomas James Donovan." Ethan's eyes were suspiciously bright. "It's perfect. He's perfect. You're perfect." He kissed her forehead. "Though if you ever ride 8 months pregnant into a gunfight again, I'm locking you in the house." "You can try." She smiled tiredly. "How's Beth?" "Doc says she'll live. Tough as nails, that one." He paused. "You saved her, Clara. Your quick thinking, your skill, you saved them both. We saved them. Together. Always together," he agreed, and kissed her softly. In the next room, Beth recovered slowly but surely. Emma refused to leave her mother's side, and when Beth was finally strong enough to sit up, Clara brought Thomas to meet her. "I owe you my life," Beth said quietly. "Both of you." "You'd have done the same for us," Clara replied. "That's what family does." Family? This valley, these people, we're all family now. We stand together. We fight together. We survive together. Clara looked at her son, Then at Sarah, who'd climbed onto the bed to see her baby brother. Then at Ethan standing in the door. Thomas proved to be an easy baby, content as long as he was fed and held. Sarah took her role as big sister seriously, always wanting to help, to hold him, to show him her favorite things. One evening, with both children asleep and the house finally quiet, Clara and Ethan sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. "Do you ever think about that day in the general store?" Ethan asked. "How different everything might have been if I'd just walked past?" "All the time, and I thank God every day that you didn't." She leaned against him. "You saved my life that day, Ethan, not just physically, but in every way that matters. You saved mine too. I was just existing before you, going through motions. You taught me how to live again." He kissed the top of her head. "You taught me that love is worth the risk of loss, that family is worth fighting for, that tomorrow is worth believing in." "We taught each other," Clara said softly. "That's what love is, I think. Not one person saving another, but two people choosing to face the world together." "You'll break my heart," she'd said that day, terrified to trust, terrified to hope. "Then I'll spend forever fixing it," he'd replied. And he had. With patience and kindness, with respect and protection, with partnership and passion. He'd taken her broken pieces and helped her forge them into something stronger. And she'd done the same for him. As the Montana night settled around them, full of stars and possibility, Clara Donovan knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. The journey had been hard, marked by fear and violence, by trials and tests, but it had led her here, to this porch, this man, this family, this life, to home. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Clara and Ethan's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.